So last week we talked about workflow a little bit. Nick talked about JSON API. No, he didn't talk. We just mentioned he was working on that. I saw something. We'll see if we have demos today. We talked about statistics for Orchard. Also, how to port NuGet to Orchard.Core, or if there are any contributors who want to do that. Yeah, stats in general, how to track how Orchard is used. I have a way to track how many Orchard sites are on Azure websites, which is nice. And that's about it. Then and I will check it out, so next time it will be at the top. And we merged and unmerged, so that's kind of a useless merge, some work from Matteo with TaxonomyFields, but he said there was some issues based on that, so we rolled it back. Now it's the more broken, so nothing else on Orchard 1, Orchard 2. So at the top, we can see the usual work on JSON API and workflows from Nick and Sipke. If we go back 7 days ago, Chris changes admin menu so that it displays on status. So fix, we talked about it last week. Then his branch, we are still trying to fix the OSX deployment. It still doesn't work because Travis has an issue, and it affects everyone trying to build .NET on Travis. They haven't still fixed that. Some people have some mitigation, but this mitigation doesn't work for us. This is a branch that has been merged. I will show you. Matteo fix, another Matteo, not the one we know. Matteo Locher. Fix parsing if default PO address is added to PO files, so fix on PO files. Typo, the thing from Chris, which was merged to filter the menu items if they are should not be displayed. This is Sipke's branch on workflow. This is some work on yessql I did on yessql that I merged in Orchard, which broke the setup. So I will re-update it today, and allowing async drivers. So these are the two things I did this week, and that's it. I am working also on, so I try to deploy on NuGet, but it doesn't work because NuGet blocks me from deploying on NuGet because my email is Microsoft. I used to have warnings only. Now it's no more warning, it's blocking. So I think I managed to get it working. Let's see, just before. So I tried it on yessql because it was blocking also yessql. And let's see if...
Why can you not deploy under a Microsoft email?
There is the client that Abveyor is using, the NuGet client that they are using is not up to date. And for some reason, NuGet was warning that the NuGet was not up to date when you are using a Microsoft email account.
Well, I understand why only Microsoft email accounts.
Because for some reasons, they prevent people from Microsoft to be able to publish with a previous client. I don't know why. But my account is linked to Microsoft email. So they say, no, we block you because you are using an old client. So I'm changing the script like this. So I want to see if it works.
So are we publishing using the Orchard account?
We could, but we still need an email behind, so I could use my Gmail account. But yeah, let's fix the issue. And this is the fix. The fix is that I'm downloading the new NuGet client. Okay, first, and then instead of using their deploy task, I create a script that says NuGet push and the NuGet API and so on. Okay, that's the idea. So that should work with any account. And I'm also ensuring that only if this is a master branch and only if this is not a pull request, because if you create a pull request that targets the master branch, it will still be seen as master. It's kind of a weird issue, I find. It's also the same thing with Travis. The default behavior is that if you filter on a branch, if you create a PR that targets this branch, this will be the branch name. So theoretically, if anyone wants to deploy on master, on a master commit, creating a PR will trigger this deployment. And kind of weird. So here I test it's not a PR and the branch is master, but it's also not a PR. And let's check one sec, Aveo, because it was running right before I joined. Login. So it's green, and at the end, uploading artifact. Okay, I'm not sure it worked correctly. I don't see any output, so yep. Crap. I will update them manually then. This is what I did last week manually. Okay, but I need to fix this. That was the yessql, the NuGet thing. What else? Okay, on the status. So what did I do on yessql?
Why is setup broken, by the way?
Because I broke yessql.
Oh,
I fixed it this morning, but the NuGet package there is a NullRef at some point. Let me show you why. Let me show you why. Let me show you what will I show you. So what did I do on this commit? Adding support for gating. What is gating? Or what do we call gating? Daniel, you raised your hand, so.
Gating, like could it be something like batching of queries, or?
Not really batching. So the idea is the same thing as we do for output caching. Is if at the same moment the same query with the same parameters and specifically select queries arrive on yessql, it will just wait for the first one to return the result and reuse the same result.
You showed this last week, didn't you?
I showed you during the triage.
Oh, okay.
That's nice. Was that inspired by output cache, or?
Not the code, but the idea, because we also do that in MVC for the tag helpers. And I found another project which was doing that also. So Image Sharp apparently also does that since this week. They call it Doorman. So yeah, gating, Doorman, kind of the same thing. And that's neat because it won't affect anything or do anything if there is no load. Like one query will be one query, or even. But if under load the same query is used a lot, then there is no reason to send it to the server. If the server is already processing it, we can just reuse the same value. And it's still materializing the objects, like deserializing and keeping them in identity maps and so on. So it's just the communication with the database, then it's done. Yep, so that's interesting. But apparently the way I compute a hash code is prone to NullRef exceptions. So I fixed that, and I need to deploy again on Orchard because the setup doesn't work with that. I didn't see that because I had my site already set up. So I have to fix it. It should be quick. Yep, so that's it. Should not impact the perf at all, but improve it under high load, where the query is really what takes a long time to process a page. Let's say you list a blog with all the blog posts. This is always the same query, and if there is load on the main blog page, then there won't be as many queries sent to the server, so it should be faster. So let's see how it goes, and we can disable it globally. If we see there is an issue, we can say disable gating, and then it won't affect anymore. And it's just for select specific scenarios which are safe. So that's it. And then, based on a bug report from Chris Payne, so Chris mentioned that trying to make a driver with an async body for displaying was failing, or was not awaited, or was not working as expected. And they actually showed a bigger issue in how the drivers work. Let me show you. Actually support async. So what committed with jet ski? Oh, because you fixed something.
No, because I committed it.
You committed on the. So the full thing is assigned to you. Interesting.
I pushed the button. I pushed the squash merge button.
Oh, because you squashed. Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah. So
usually I do that, so I was confused. Okay, that's okay. So pull request. Oh, I can look at the commit. Where is the committed?
Yeah. So I did the async driver support.
Oh, and because you pushed, you didn't remove this.
Yeah, I know.
As usual. So yeah, now the main changes you will see here is that we have more async. Let me see. The drivers should not change because there is a bridge from action to func for the drivers. But something new is that the shape factory is no more .create but create async, and you need to wait for it. So creating a shape is an async operation, and it's an async operation also when you do new dot something, like new pager now is await new pager. Okay. Because this thing will trigger some async calls to initialization, to cache resolution, things like this when it's rendered. So, well, the new doesn't affect the resolution, the rendering, but there are some events like creating, initializing that are async now. So this has to be async. This can lead to a weird syntax where you have to wrap the wait in parentheses and then call the method to assign properties, but you can just do the properties directly inside the method call if you don't like it. So that's the main change. But it had to be everywhere to be sure it worked. I don't see anything else to say about it. Also, the create async from the shape factory. If we look at it, shape factory, default shape factory. This thing, one change also is that default shape factory is that it doesn't return a dynamic anymore like it used to do. By default, it returns a nice shape, but we don't see it here. Where is that? So at some point, it was returning a dynamic by default. Now it's a nice shape, and if you want the dynamic behavior, just cast it as a dynamic. That should also help some perf scenarios not to use dynamic by default. Yes, for instance, here you see shape created context, you get the shape directly. If you want the dynamic thing, then just cast it to dynamic. The default implementation is implementing dynamic, so that's okay. Yep, that's it for this change. Then, SIP-Koenig. I need to make you presenters.
Okay, cool. All right, cool. So I've been working on GraphQL off and on over the last couple of weeks, and I don't know how much people know about GraphQL. I'll see if I can sketch it out for you. So GraphQL allows you to query a single endpoint in both GET and POST. So the endpoint is graph, funny enough, GraphQL. And what that allows you to do is when you're querying using GET, you specify it in the parameter, in the query string, else you specify it in the body of the post. Now, what that allows you to do is it allows you to write complex queries. So the way I view GraphQL is you've got a shopping list, and you say to a shop, I want these things, and the shop will give them to you back. They won't give you anything more, they won't give you anything less, they give you exactly what you ask for. So how does that work? So if I said, let's say I want a content item with a content ID of 10, for example, I would write a query where my content item has a has an ID, I guess, of 10. And I want to say, well, I want the title to actually not title, I want the ID and I want the content item ID to be returned. Now I can pass that in, and what you'll end up back with is you'll end up back with an output of content item with an ID of 10 and a content item ID of, I don't know, whatever it is. So it will look like that. When you ask for something in an order, ID content item 1, 2, the order is respected, so 1, 2, so you know what order things are. Now, when writing tests against this stuff, it can get a little bit complex, especially when you're talking about doing creating content and updating content. They are referred to in GraphQL terms as mutations. I'm not going to write a mutation down here, but what I'm going to show you is the client that I've written in order to help with my testing. So if I jump over to Orchard.Core, and I've tried to write the client in a way that kind of expresses how you normally talk about Orchard. So I've got this, ignore the context stuff, that's just XUnit crux. So I have this client called an Orchard GraphQL client. And what that allows me to do is, if I say on my context, I want to say I've got a client and I want to talk to either the tenant's endpoint or the content endpoint or content resource. So it's kind of a way of viewing GraphQL in a resource-based way, just on it within the client. If you want to jump out to the client and use Postman or something like that, then you can do that. Or if you want to run a string against it using HTTP client, you can still do that. This is just a way of kind of not doing that. So I want to talk to, let's say, the tenant's endpoint, and I want to create a tenant on the fly. So I can create a tenant called site name with a database provider, username, password, email, and a recipe name. Well, that's actually what I do when I start the site up. So if I go into site context, I create a site in my test. So when I run my test, that goes and creates me a site, and I now have a freshly baked blog site that I can use. So I know that I've got a site, and now I want to start doing content stuff against it. So I can say, well, okay, cool. I'm going to talk to the content resource, and I'm going to say I want to create a piece of content. So I want to create a blog post, and I've got a resource builder here. So I want to create stuff like content parts and all that kind of nice stuff that we've got. So if I say if I've got a builder, and I do builder dot with content part. So what this is building up at the moment is, if I jump out and I'm just going to go back to here. So what I'm doing is I'm saying I'm creating something that I'm creating a blog post where I'm going to have some content parts. So I'm going to have a content part on here, which is going to be called a title part, I haven't used any generics yet, and some of the syntax may seem a bit strange, but it's we've got some. There's just some tidying up to do. So I'm going to create a title part, and then I'm going to say, well, let me just put that onto the next line. I'm going to say, well, on that title part, I'm going to add a field, and a field is title property if you think of it in terms of object terms. So a title, and I'm going to say, well, that title's probably going to be like, hi there. Cool. And then I could also say, well, I know that I've got an auto route part, so I can say with content part, auto route part. And that's going to have a field of, I believe, path with, I don't know, test. So what we've just done is made it so it doesn't compile. What we've done is we've created a blog post with a title part. So we're referencing a title part here with a field of title set to hi there and an auto route part with a path set to test, all within my test. And that will return me my newly created content. So you can see it returns me a task of string, and I always have the content item ID passed back within what's returned. So, which is quite nice. I'm just going to revert that just because I don't want to break my test. Hang on. Let me just undo that. And then I want to say, well, okay, cool. So I've created my blog post and I've got my content item here. So let's just say I've created a blog post. Here's one I did earlier. So I've created a blog post and I want to say, well, okay, cool. I want to go get that blog post. So I can now say context.client.content. I have a query endpoint, so I can say I want to query a blog post, content type of blog post, and then I've got another builder. My builder is allowing me to add things like a query field. So the query field is going to be, in this instance, my content item ID. And I know that I've got my content item ID from here. And yeah, cool. So that's going to give me absolutely nothing back except a completely empty blog post object. With GraphQL, you, like I said earlier, you specify what you want returned. So I could say to the shopkeep, hey, find me a box of, I don't know, cereal, but don't give it to me back. And that's what essentially what we've done here is we've said, hey, go find me a blog post, but don't give me anything back. So how do we get stuff back? Well, we can say, we can add a field, just like we did earlier. So I want to say, I want my, I want the title back from my blog post, from my title part. Let me have it wrong. Title. With nested field, sorry. That field name. Oh, maybe I've got something wrong here. Post builder with field. Oh, yeah, okay, cool. So with nested field. So I want to say within the title part, I want the title. It made sense when I was building it. Some things need to change. And then that will now return me the title of the blog post. So I can now do something like this, blog post, and I will have a title. What's interesting about GraphQL is if I specify title with an uppercase T, it will always query on a lowercase t. It's a bit of an oddity. I'm not sure how we're going to handle that where we've got properties of uppercase and lowercase. But yeah, that's what I've been working on so far. The tests I've got most of them go green. The only one not going green at the moment is an auto route issue. So, but yeah, it's looking cool. That's my demo.
Questions?
Cool.
So the main goal of GraphQL, I assume, is not to have this client API, but that's a nice thing. But to be able to query the content from.
Yeah, exactly. So the goal is to just have a GraphQL endpoint, right? This client that I'm using in order to query it, I mean, that can still be distributed, but you know, that's just to talk to GraphQL. You could use any GraphQL library out there. This just puts it into an Orchard perspective. That's all.
Good.
What sort of GraphQL client do you use on the server side, Nick? One of the available ones, C# ones, or did you write one?
No, definitely not write one. I am using GraphQL.net. Don't know if I've got it open. Is it this one? Not Python.
There's two of them. Both of them seem to be named that, but with different spelling.
Well, this one is the one I'm using. GraphQL-.net.
All right. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Sharing my screen. And I assume everyone can see because of these little screens. And so Sipke shared his screenshots. Apparently it works, so you can create new workflow definitions. This is a simple list, properties of the workflow definition, and editing the workflow here. And the editor starts to work, so you can apparently link activities. They are not rendered correctly, but that will come. And it looks like the same as Orchard 1. I look at how you did that because there are ways to do that better than Orchard 1. I'm not sure if you did the same or differently. Same thing for the icons, not using the same thing that we did in Orchard 1 with the CSS, which are included automatically even if they don't exist. Now it's better in Orchard.Core. Do the same as the deployment steps, for instance. Progress. Does it store the state? Can you edit an activity already?
No, this is really just JSON in action with a hard-coded JSON model. You can't even drag and drop activities onto the canvas yet.
Okay. Do we want drag and drop? I thought about it. Yeah, drag and drop is nice, but it takes place.
What do you mean? How you mean from the toolbox onto the canvas?
Mm-hmm. If you take deployment steps or what else, or
you just start the action of adding an activity. You choose which one, and then it just drops it somewhere on the screen, and then you can move it into place. Yeah, that's an option.
You have a pop-up to display all the things. What else do I do that? So deployment steps.
Is that the latest version of JS Plum? Sipke?
Yep, it is. Yeah, it looks good. I looked at others, but they don't look as good and they don't behave as nice.
Yep.
Okay, that's good. Does the engine work?
Which engine? The workflow engine?
Yeah.
I haven't tested it yet, but the code is very similar to the one from Orchard 1.
And you did the changes we talked about with the context and instances and everything?
Part of it, yes.
Okay. Good.
Yeah, it will be very, very nice. It will be a little bit better, I think, than Orchard 1.
Has to.
Yeah, it has to.
Okay, great, thank you. Questions about it? Cool, okay. Am I on the screen? Yes. Done. Topics. Do we have any topics, questions?
The naming of the BagPart.
The naming of the BagPart. We can also go over a few issues if we want.
I like BagPart. I like the name.
Cool. Issues.
Who doesn't like the name?
It can be better.
What is it supposed to
You don't know
mean?
BagPart? You don't know BagPart? You don't know.
Now the content items.
This is awesome. BagPart is awesome. I'm telling you. It's an old thing now, but because we are shipping, Antoine was asking why do we call it BagPart. The same way Sipke was asking why do we call it design and not configuration, right?
It reminds me of a C# object, the bag. Was it concurrent bag?
Is it
Yes.
is it unordered or is it ordered?
It is ordered.
Then it shouldn't be bag. Should be
set.
list.
A list.
Yeah,
But-
set could be.
But
yeah.
we didn't use list because list is used already. It's a list part. So let me tell you, Daniel. You know what lists are in Orchard 1, okay? Collection of content items. A bag in Orchard.Core is an embedded collection of content items. So if you have a bag of things, your content item owns physically the content items of this BagPart. So the BagPart serialization contains the content item. You don't reference external content items. You contain them. That's why I call it a bag part. And you can have many bag parts which are named parts in Orchard.Core. So for instance, we use it a lot in the agency recipe, but Orchard doesn't work on my machine, so I won't be able to show you. And I'm sure you haven't seen the agency recipe. So the idea is that we have a one content item, for instance, one content type called what do I call it? The landing page content type. And this content type has 5 different named back parts. One is called projects, one is called menu items, one is called services, team members, and each of them points to a different content item type. And then with your main page, you own all the other content items that you are editing in the editor. So when you load the page, you already have everything. So the back part lets you edit a list of content items for specific types and store the content items as part of the current content item. So it's very useful for performance and also for organizing your content. And the original idea was to be able to add attachments to, for instance, a blog post. So instead of having media files in the main media management and then you select them when you edit your body, you could say, no, these images, for instance, are just for this blog post. So you will add them to an attachment named BagPart. Well, a BagPart named attachments, and then you will add them there. So they are available only for this blog post, and you can reference them in your body. So the same way it's to own something. You contain the thing. So that's why I called it bag instead of list to balance with the list name. And then Antoine says that it's not obvious what it does. But whatever the name, I assume it's not obvious what it will do. this could be more obvious, like, okay, nested, that's what I also mentioned. Yeah, nested I like better than sub items. Embedded attachments, but attachments is a way to represent what we embed. So yeah.
My only issue with the name bag is that I think it denotes that it's sort of unorganized and unordered.
I know, that's why, because you're a programmer, that's why I also mentioned set, because in C# a set is ordered. No, it's not even ordered, a set. No, actually, it's not even ordered. But yeah, the collection is a set. Yeah, I don't know. But yes, order matters in this case, because you can even reorder the items. That's very nice. You take an item, you put it up, and it shows up live in the screen. It's nice.
What about array? Back to basics.
That's very programmer-y. So I'm not. It might make sense to programmers. It might make less sense for non-programmers, or I don't know. I'm not sure.
Yeah, maybe.
Bag is not bad per se, as long as we explain what it does. I mean, and even whatever the name is, we need to explain what it does and how it works and why you want to use it. Sure. So in nice way, that's subcontent. Bag isn't self-explanatory.
It's kind of like you say, no name will be self-explanatory for this concept, but they can at least not contradict the concept.
Yeah, you think too much about the order.
But it's kind of a important aspect to it, isn't it?
Yeah, but bag doesn't mean it's not ordered. Like embedded or nested doesn't mean it's not ordered or ordered.
But when you think of a bag, you just think of something that you throw stuff into, and it's just sort of random in there, and you have to go reach in to find what you're looking for.
Yeah. I would like to see your bags when they are packed, if they are not ordered. I'm sure they are ordered, your bags.
Ask Sipke about his shopping bags.
Yeah, there is. Array doesn't mean it's, if you're not a programmer, you don't even think, oh, is it ordered or not ordered? It doesn't give any insurance that it will be ordered. So I don't know. I will not change it now, because if it's not really important.
So what about Sipke's comment about what collection?
It could be a collection. Why not? Does it add more order in your opinion? Is it better than bag? Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, collection is like a base class to a list and a bag.
And you are C# developers. It's not about programming C#. It doesn't have any relationship with that. And what you think might make sense for you might do the opposite for someone else.
No, I agree with that. I think bag is cool.
Well, collection has some meaning. Okay, it's a collection of things. It could be also, so for instance, instead of list, some CMSs uses the term channel, for instance, because it's more content oriented than list. Channel, like, okay, a blog can be seen as a channel, a list of news is a channel.
But Sebastian, what is the defining difference between a bag and a list in Orchard.Core? Is it that it's defined locally?
The ownership. List doesn't own anything. It just points to content items. Bag owns the content items. That's the difference. And both have some ordering logic.
Maybe one could consider something like a local list, like a variation of list to signify the difference.
Why not? Yeah, so I also mentioned embedded to mention the ownership, but embedded part doesn't mean it will be a list of things. It might be, okay, embedded. Attachments looks nice because you have the same collection, and you mentioned local list. Yeah,
or embedded list could work too.
Embedded list part, I'm afraid then. Yeah, okay. Well, So who wants to change the name? Who thinks it's a bad name and we should change it to something better? Antoine for sure. Antoine, Daniel, again Sipke, Nick. Who's this guy, Daniel? I don't know.
Rosenberg. Is that like Heisenberg? Except you're not a meth dealer.
Pretty much, yeah. I'm
maybe you are a meth
I'm
dealer.
just a rose dealer.
Oh, you're a rose dealer.
Rose
Okay.
dealer. Yep, I don't know. I don't really care as long as it's good, but changing for changing.
That sums up my feeling too. I don't care as long as it's good.
You think bag is not good?
Yeah, exactly.
I'm afraid of using the term list.
No. List
I mean,
scares me.
as he says, orderly. Well, what do you get? Local list or something like that list.
List just reminds me way too much of, new list.
A list is already used, so that's the issue because there could be more ambiguity because they use the same thing, the same name, somehow.
I like blog. Bag, sorry.
Maybe the ambiguity shouldn't be seen as a bad thing in this case. Maybe it's a good thing that it reminds you of the list concept because it's basically the same thing, only with different ownership. So maybe that's actually clearer to people.
But wouldn't we also have a list part? That is like the Orchard.1 list part?
Oh, we have
Or
a
is
list
that
part. We have a list part.
Yeah, so, but I mean, that's not necessarily a bad thing. You have a list, and then you have a local list, and the fact that they're both named list makes it clearer, perhaps, that they're similar. Because they are used for the same thing, basically. It's just the change of ownership.
So you're saying physically they would be the same part, but depending on how it's attached, it behaves differently?
No.
No?
You have two parts. One is called local list and one is called list.
Right.
Yeah,
But they are related because they are both named list, like list part and local list part. So you're like, okay, oh, that's a list also, but what is it different from list part? Oh, it's local. Local is still weird.
Embedded list part?
But then if you say embedded list part, is it like embedded items part? No.
List of embedded items part.
Yes. That's
Go for it.
That's why I'm seeing BagPart description list of embedded. You see, items part. That's whatever you name it. Local list doesn't local doesn't.
Yeah,
I think
local might
just
not
leave
be
it.
the best qualifier.
Technically, it's more like owned, but it's not good because people won't understand what owned is.
Yeah.
Attachment is nice because it's attachment is attached.
Yeah, maybe there's nothing much wrong with attachments because you're basically attaching content items to the item. And if you wanted to use as actual attachments, like as in an email, then that's fine. But I agree with Nick. I think we should leave it as BagPart because it conveys the meaning that you have a bag into which you put stuff. and the user doesn't care, or probably doesn't even realize that technically it's not correct because it's ordered instead of unordered, and it's short, where the other names are a little bit technical and a bit long.
Yeah, we can change it later. I will keep this thing open. I will. Local list. We don't have to change for beta 1. We can change later. It will be a nasty breaking change, but yeah. Beta 2. People, if we read something like this, and we'll see what people say, because they are supposed to use it a lot. So we'll see what the feedback is, if they like it, don't like it, ask questions, why is it called bag, what does it do, and we'll see. So that was a topic. Let's see issues, if there are other things.
Just one final thought on that topic, Sebastian. What about container?
I thought about it, but we don't have that in Orchard.Core, so it could not conflict with anything. That could work.
I was thinking that's kind of the defining aspect, that it contains the stuff rather than just list it. Anyway, just a thought.
That would work. People from Orchard 1 will be super confused, but yep, prefer that to local list. Container, yep. Yeah, there is nothing very special. Everything has been tried. You can see we try to assign, when we agree with the issue, we try to assign it to milestone. So we'll trash that on Thursday. They are new. This thing is mandatory to be fixed. It's broken. And I don't think I tried to deploy, but I'm not sure it works. That's weird. Maybe the NuGet.org site was not listing the packages yet. I'll try after. So, yep. Anything else, Antoine, I missed? That we should talk about? Pull request, pretty steady. Nothing that we said we will accept for beta 1.
Are we bug bouncing at the moment?
Yes, just documentation.
Okay.
So there was nothing triage for beta 1. Well, the new thing here. Why doesn't it appear, actually? The thing I just assigned to beta 1. Or didn't I do that? Where is that? Does it? Did I close it? Where is the setup issue I just opened? Oh, this one? Oh, beta 2? Oh, I put beta 2. Okay. Ah. Yeah, this fails. That's weird. Yep.
On which site will you publish a post saying Orchard.Core is available in beta?
ASP.NET. That would work. I assume they will let me do that. I have to ask, but that documentation will be on documentation site, the guides and everything. But the main blog post should be on ASP.NET. That will make sense. If not, I think we know someone with access to the .NET team blog post, so he can hack a blog there. Otherwise, yep. We'll reach to NuGet and write a blog post after. We don't have to do that the same day. That's it. And then everyone can blog about it and tackle a specific scenario, like Chris did. So we are good.
What was Chris building?
A website for a customer. I don't know what. A website. I think he's done with it.
Cool.
Okay. Cool. Other questions? Good. Then see you on Thursday.